Okay, guys, it's a minute past the hour. We've got a few more showing up on the West Coast, but it's wonderful to have such a large group interested. As you're aware, with these webinars, an opportunity to type in any questions. We will have time at the end as Dave Basham presents on the Form I-9 from Dave is actually with the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, known as the USCIS, and it's the government agency that oversees the lawful immigration to the United States. The fact that you're here is you have some interest in the I-9. You're interested in figuring out how that we're, as a country, to use the system of I-9 and E-verification for engaging the public to align our responsibilities in HR with securing our homeland borders. So if that's the theme of what Dave Basham is about, public engagement that aligns with screening our homeland borders, this presentation today is going to be about him and that mission. You'll note that there are 3 vendors that are presenting here. I'm representing the Channel Alliances for EMPTRUST, a wonderful onboarding solution that has a scalable I-9 solution for small companies up to our largest with 330,000 employees. I'm not going to make this about a selling opportunity, so let me stop at that. I will mention as the slides move forward, we've got Dan Price and Don Sanderwich with us as well. A little bit of the information about each of our vendors here, here with EMPTRUST, and the next one with PDS. Dan Post is joining us here on the panel. PDS Software is a human resources, benefit administration, and payroll system. I've known them for years. I started about the time they did 42 years ago. They're the oldest HRIS software company, but remarkable how they deliver dynamic results. So a great partner and integrated to the EMPTRUST solution, as is our friend from the other side of the country, and that's Don Sanderwich. Dawn is with ESR, Employment Screening Resources, and you can come back and read these ideals and some insight, and of course you'll have the contact information for any of us if you have some questions pertaining to productization. But what we'll have here is with Dawn, they are a global provider of online access to background screening, substance abuse testing, and occupational health screening services. And I love going to the shows with Don. Don will become the new president of the NAPBS, National Association of Professional Background Screeners, next year. And she spends a lot of time in Washington dealing with different HR issues. So what we'll do today is deal with some of these issues as it pertains to the legal aspect of immigration. The housekeeping, of course, you're in a listen mode. We ask that you stay with us to the end, and at the end, be ready with some questions. Dan and Don will be reviewing and monitoring the questions as they pop up. So since you began with questions and the reason that you're here, go ahead and start typing some of those. Copies of the slides will, of course, become available, and in time, a recording of the webinar will be available for references. I will let you know that that Dave, as he makes these presentations, there is a limit to his ability. He is not an elected official and the czar responsible for all compliance, nor is he responsible for changing policy. So don't take any questions or cheap shots at how we should do things different with securing our borders. But as it pertains to the I-9 solution, let's learn as much as we can in the next hour, and hopefully we'll be a better community for it. So Dave, let me let you start and give us some insight that will cause us to have more questions.
Hey, thanks a lot, Larry, and quick shout out to EMPTRUST. I certainly appreciate this opportunity to message the I-9, and you might want to jot this down. In February, I think it's early February, and you'll get an email on this. We're going to have a follow-up session, but it's going to be on E-Verify, the I-9's companion. As you heard Larry state, I'm with USCIS, Citizenship and Immigration Services. I'm here in Washington, D.C., and within USCIS, I work directly in the verification division, and it's our division that houses the I-9 and the E-Verify. Go ahead and move forward, Thomas. Today's session is solely going to be on the I-9. We're going to get into the I-9, look at it from the front, back, left to right, get into some of the most common questions that I receive, or sometimes the most common misunderstandings, and we're going to go ahead and address those. So I do encourage you to send those questions via the chat feature in, and hopefully in about 40-45 minutes I'll stop with the material, and we'll go ahead and jump into some of those Q&As. So you see our agenda today, and go ahead and move forward with that, Thomas. Background, we'll look at the actual I-9 and each block, storage and retention, and we'll close it out with some resources. Just as a reminder, you're going to post this webinar. You'll receive this PowerPoint that will include those 3 great slides that Larry showed with each one of the other vendors and some of their services as well. So in short, the background on the I-9, yep, it was born specifically back in 1986. If you hired anyone after November 6, 86, you need to have an I-9 on an individual. The handbook that we have on, we call it now Guidance on Completing the I-9, it's called the M274. You might wonder, well, where did they get that Army number from? If you look at the last paragraph there, you'll see where we pulled that 274 number from. Go ahead, Thomas. Here are individuals that can legally work in the United States. That second group, the non-citizen nationals, those are individuals such as from America, Samoa, or the Swan Islands. Now, the purpose of the employment verification obviously is to verify the identity and employment authorization of those that were hired after November 6, 86. Look at that second comment there, and I'm going to reiterate this several times. Make sure that you complete and retain an I-9 for those employees that were hired after November 6, 1986. Why do I say that I'm going to reiterate that several times? I'm still surprised by the amount of employers that I run up against or have some questions with me, and they tell me, Dave, we've been shredding our I-9s after 3 years. So remember, as long as they're continuing to work for you and you hired after November 6, 86, you need to have an I-9 on file. Go ahead, Larry. And obviously refrain from discrimination. Go ahead, Thomas. You'll see here are the 4 types of unlawful conduct that are covered by and enforced. And there's the 4, but that's kind of lead into the next slide. Go ahead, Thomas. To the Office of Special Counsel. And the Office of Special Counsel, I'll refer to them as OSC throughout today's presentation. They're with the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. We do a lot of presentations with them. Why? We message and we own the I-9 and E-Verify. But it's the Office of Special Counsel that handles those anti-discrimination provisions. In short, employers that maybe are going down that road of discrimination on how they conduct the completion or assistance on the I-9 or E-Verify, it's the Office of Special Counsel that enforces those provisions. What's your takeaway on this slide? Look at that number down toward the bottom. Employers may also contact OSC. Granted, I know you don't have this slide deck right now, but you might want to jot that phone number down, or at least slide number 7, 1-800-255-8155. What's important about that number? Heading into today's session, if you wonder, hey, are we treading on that gray area of discrimination in regards to how we conduct the completion of I-9 and or E-Verify with our employees? Whether your policies are written or verbal, and you want to bounce that off the Office of Special Counsel, you can do that and remain anonymous. You simply dial that number. They have their attorneys and or their investigators that rotate on that help number When you dial the number, they pick up the phone. They don't want to know your name, your address, your NAICS code, what's your company name, your city, state, any of that. Simply bounce the question off of them. I can't reiterate that, impress upon you enough to utilize their services. As many of their attorneys, and you can go ahead and move forward, Thomas, as many of the attorneys I speak with at various conferences around the country tell me, Dave, are you pushing the customer service slide of ours, our helpline, because they would rather help you on the front side than to meet you in the courtroom, and you're sitting at one table and Office Special Counsel is sitting at the other table with your employee. Okay, we're going to start looking at the block by block on the I-9 here in a second, but real quick, I understand many of you may be using some type of electronic format or software in regards to the I-9, but just to give you a little background, or those that are still using the pen to paper, let's just discuss the I-9 for a little bit, okay? There are 9 pages to the I-9 when you print it off. The current version of the I-9, as you see on the screen here before you, it's about 2.5 years old now. You printed off the 9 pages. The first 6 pages are instructions. Pages 7 or 8 are what you see here before you, and page 9 are the list of acceptable documents. The only thing that you have to maintain is what you see here before you. But you should be providing your new hire access to the ability to see all 9 pages. Let's go ahead and move forward, Thomas. As we stated, there's an exception to those employees you wouldn't have to have an I-9 file on for, and those that were hired on or before November 6, 1986, and a lack of better terms, they're grandfathered in. Let's look at that last paragraph down there, though. You may delegate the authority to have the I-9 completed by a responsible agent. However, you retain the liability for any errors. What are we talking about there? But many of you, you may have what's known as remote hires. Now, understand that Dawn's company is in Colorado, or she is generally in Colorado. Let's say that Dawn calls and offers me a position to be her Northern Virginia sales rep, and I accept the job over the phone, but Dawn says, hey, Dave, we're not going to fly you out here to Colorado to fill out all your onboarding paperwork. We're going to mail it out to you. And maybe one of those forms is the Form I-9. Dawn can have me go see whomever she wants to complete Section 2 of the I-9 on her behalf. But going back to that paragraph there, her firm retains the liability for any errors that that individual that completes Section 2 on her behalf conducts. It could be a friend, a family member, an attorney. It could be a notary. It could be a librarian, whomever. So just be very careful if you're having someone else complete Section 2 on your behalf, that they are very familiar on the completion of the form. Go ahead, Thomas. Here are some of the exceptions of those individuals that you're not required to complete an I-9 for. That second group, we're not just talking about a construction company that maybe comes to your home or place of business to put an addition on your home. You know, many firms today hire what's known as contractors. In my line of business with the I-9 or E-Verify, I like to refer to them as those 1099 employees, although the payroll community is very quick to correct me, going, Dave, they're known as 1099 vendors, but I think you know what I'm talking about here. Now, I'm not telling you 100% of the time those 1099 employees do not have to have an I-9, be a very high percentage, but it really gets down to your legal counsel, your HR directors, and you truly discuss them. What is the true relationship between that individual and your company? And anytime I use the term today, the United States, we're talking, as you see down below, and go ahead, Thomas, the 50 United States, District of Columbia, Guam, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and the CNMI, also known as the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. They're located very near Guam, and they were federalized back in 2009. On the screen before you now is the list of acceptable documents. When you run off the I-9, this is the 9th page. It's this page that once an employee, when you, the employer, are ready to complete Section 2 of the I-9, this page is what you should be showing that an employee in regards to what documents that they can show. They either show one document from list A, which establishes both identity and the employment authorization, or a combination of a B document and a column C document. Once again, one from column A or one from B and C. I have employers that will ask, well, Dave, what if we ask for more documents or two? You don't want to do that. That's called document discrimination. You'll see on the slide here before you now the green card and the signature. We want to make you aware of this. We've added this slide in the past couple months. There are a number of green cards now that are being issued by USCIS where it says, and you'll see there in that second paragraph there, signature waived. Be aware of that. Should individuals within your firm that handle the I-9, if an individual shows a permanent resident card and it has signature waived, that you don't automatically think, ooh, this is a bogus card or a fraudulent card. So be aware of that. You're going to see toward the end of this slide deck where we have a customer service number that you can contact Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with any question, and that's 8 a.m., 5 p.m. your time zone, with any question on the I-9 or E-Verify. So if you run up against this and you have a question, hey, I remember Dave saying something about that, you can pick up the phone and call and talk to one of our live reps. Go ahead and move forward, Thomas. Thank you. Okay, let's jump into the I-9 here in section 1. There's 2 pages of the I-9 fill out now. Page 1 makes up section 1. Within that first page of section 1, there's 3 subsections. Here's the first subsection, which is employee information. The second subsection, which we'll look at here in the next slide here in a minute, is the employee attestation. It's those 2 sections that the employee completes. Your only requirement in regards to section 1, where the employee completes, is to ensure that they completely and correctly fill out section 1. You're not validating any information in section 1. An example, you'll see here's the option for the Social Security card, Social Security number here in section 1 to be completed, which by the way is an optional field. Many employers still feel that, ooh, we thought the Social Security number field was a mandatory field. No, it's an optional field with a caveat there. Unless you're enrolled in E-Verify, then it is a mandatory field. But if an individual decides to put their Social Security number here in section 1, you can't ask for their Social Security card to validate that that is their number. Remember, where you're validating information is based on the documents they provide you in section 2. Now you might say, now hold on, Dave. We need their Social Security number for payroll purposes when they fill out that form, or we need their driver's license because they're going to be driving a company vehicle. I understand that, but don't confuse the need for various documents for other reasons outside the I-9. Don't confuse those with the rules and the policies set forth in regards to the I-9. You'll see here on the first line, last name, first name, middle initial, other names used, if any. That other names used it as an optional field. Look at the second line, the address. What's different on this version versus the previous version? The street number and name. No P.O. boxes. I still have individuals go, Dave, we only have P.O. boxes in our part of the country. No, I can tell you, if you go to the fire department, police station, sheriff's department, the post office, you can find out the proper street number and name. But that's what you put in that block. Now, I do want to discuss this as a talking point simply because I've been asked this question close to a dozen times over the past couple months. Dave, what do we do in the event that we've hired a homeless individual and they don't have an address, a permanent resident address? Well, let me tell you about our website on the I-9. You might want to jot this down. It's called I-9 Central. I-9 Central. It's your one-stop shop for everything on the I-9. It's a different website than our E-Verify website, and it's on I-9 Central. If you go to the FAQs, you'll see this very question where we respond that as long as they can explain there in that block where they're residing as of that day, that's good to go. Now, use this as an example. Maybe an individual says, I'm currently residing underneath the bridge at the intersection of I-77 and Main Street. Maybe it's behind Earl's hardware store, etc. So you see, as long as they can explain where their address is as of that day. Now, if individual changes, writes an address down today, even if it's a permanent address, you know, I live at 123 Main Street, and they move next week, they don't have to come in and change the address on the I-9. What is their address as of that day? Then moving on that second line, the apartment number, city or town, state, and zip code. The third line, date of birth. Look at what's different on this version versus the previous version. It's the format. 2-digit month, 2-digit day, 4-digit year. How many of your employees, when they're filling this out or completing this, put it in that format? I'm sure there's many that don't, but don't fret if they don't use that format, because I-9 Central will tell you, as long as the date that they put in that block is easily recognizable, you're good to go. The Social Security block, I told you once again, that's an optional field unless you're enrolled in E-Verify. On this version of the I-9, we added 9 individual blocks. Why? Because we had the public contacting us on the previous version going, you know, we're having individuals that are only putting 6 digits in that big open Social Security number block. So we said, we'll fix that. We'll put 9 individual blocks. And then the 2 blocks that are new to the I-9 on this version, the email address and the telephone number. They are optional fields. They don't have to be completed. An individual can place one or the other, neither, both. Why did we add them to the I-9? It's my most common question on the I-9. Let's say that I live in Colorado, and going back to Dawn, I go in, Dawn offers me a position, and I'm in Dawn's office. And Dawn says, Dave, we want you to start work today. And I'm going to be maybe a project manager for her firm, but it's going to be about 2 hours away. But that day when I come in to fill out the I-9, I fill everything out, and maybe I put an email address and or a telephone number, and then I leave and I go up 2 hours away and start working at that office location. Maybe the following day, Dawn's staff starts taking a look at my I-9, maybe the supervisor, and does like a Q&A check, quality assurance check, and make sure everything's good to go before it files away. And if there's a question on something, if I've put my email address and or telephone number, that's just another means for Dawn's staff to reach out and talk to me. So once again, they are optional fields. Now we'll tell you, and we'll go over this during our E-Verify webinar in February, but if an individual places their email address on the I-9, then you must enter it into E-Verify. For those of you that are enrolled in E-Verify, and if you're unaware of that, don't fret. You don't need to go back and run another case. Just make corrective action as you move forward. Let's go ahead and move forward, Thomas. Okay, here's the second subsection, the employee attestation. This is the section that the employee completes as well. You'll see the 2 areas we really want to highlight and touch on here. The first one is they need to attest to being one of the 4 categories. Now, I do a lot of presentations with our sister agency, ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, which, by the way, even though we at USCIS own the I-9, it's our sister agency, ICE, that does the audits. ICE, they have a program called MAGE, ICE Mutual Agreement between government and employers, and they hold about 15 sessions, seminars, one-day seminars that we generally are invited to speak on the I-9 and E-Verify, but they bring some of their local auditors to that seminar to assist during some of the Q&A sessions. I like to talk with those auditors, and I always ask them, hey, tell me some of the wildest things you're seeing on some of your I-9 audits now. And I always get a chuckle when they say, hey, there's individuals that check off 3 or 4 of these categories. I'm a U.S. citizen, I'm a permanent resident, and I'm this and that. Remember, they check off 1. What do you do if they select more than one of those blocks? Remember, your responsibility as the employer is that they completely and correctly fill it out. So realizing they can only check off 1, you would simply provide that back to them or have them make the correction where they're only selecting 1 of those blocks. You see the 3D barcode off to the right, don't worry about it. You're going to see it on the second page as well. You may say, well, why did you put it on there, Dave? Well, somebody in the USCIS food chain way above me knows somewhere down the line we want to use this 3D barcode. but you don't have to worry about it at this time. You'll see the area where the employee signs and they date the I-9. Look at the last comment on this slide. All employees need to complete Section 1, remember that employee information we just showed on the previous slide, and this employee attestation section no later than the first day they start working for pay. But let me ask you this. When's the earliest an employee and you, the employer, can complete the I-9 on a new hire? You know, it's before they start working for pay. The answer is, once you've offered them an employment and they've accepted that position, but no later than the first day they start working for pay, you can complete Section 1. Now, I know several of you might be going, hold on, I thought we had 3 days to complete the I-9. We'll talk about Section 2 here in a second, but we're talking Section 1. And let me give you an example. Dawn called and offered me a position on 1 December, and I accepted the job. But she said, Dave, for payroll purposes, we're not going to have you start working until the 15th. I go, good to go. Well, let's say in this circumstance, I live there in Colorado, and here today on the 10th of December, I bounce into Dawn's office so I can meet and greet everyone. And while I'm in there, Dawn's staff states, hey, Dave, while you're in here, how would you like to complete the I-9? Can we do that? Remember, I'm not starting to work for pay till the 15th. Yes, we can. Why? Because remember, I was offered and accepted the job on the 1st. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide there. We'll look at Section 2 here in a second. This is the bottom of the first page of the I-9, the Preparer Translator Certification block. This is not to be completed by the employee. The only time you, the employer, would complete this, and what's the definition of this portion? Pretty much defined in the title. If you help prepare the I-9 for someone, maybe I was playing basketball with my granddaughter last night. Today was my first day I showed working up for pay, and I tell Dawn's staff, I'm in the office, Dawn, it really hurts to write. Can I tell someone what to fill in each one of those blocks? Well, can they do that? They can do that, but they need to fill out this Preparer Translator Certification block. Additionally, if the I-9 is translated, whoever helps translate that I-9 is to be the one to fill out this Prepare Translator Certification block. Now let me ask you this question. How many I-9s can be used in the U.S. today? Remember what I said was the definition of the United States. You know, there's more than one. There's two. There's an English version and a Spanish version, but the only place that you can complete the I-9 in Spanish, meaning pen to paper, actually fill it out, is in Puerto Rico. But that's not to say that you can't use the Spanish version as a translation tool within itself to assist individuals. But when they are completing the I-9 pen to paper, it has to be done on the English version. So once again, the only place you can complete the I-9 pen to paper is in Puerto Rico. Let's go ahead and move forward. Here's Section 2 and Section 3, which makes up the second page of the I-9. I can tell you when this I-9 was in draft format, came out in March of 2013. So it was several months before that. In the division that I work in, there's several hundred people, and they pulled 6 of us, and I was one, since I'm a subject matter expert speaker on the I-9 E-Verify for USCIS. And I took a look at this, and they asked us, hey, look at this draft I-9 we're about to put out, and had us discuss it with them and make some comments. I asked as myself, hey, where do I think employers are going to make the most mistakes on this new version of the I-9? And this is just Dave speaking here, not USCIS. I think it's right up here at top. We have it highlighted. I think many employers are going to forget that they need to write in the first name, the last name, the middle initial and last name of the employee. Why? Because you've never had to do that before. You see that 3D barcode there again off to the right? Don't worry about it. We still have, obviously, list A, B, and C. There's no changes to those blocks, but in list A, where there's 2 blocks, we added a 3rd block. Why? For those of you that work in the colleges, university, institutions of higher learning field, you're probably familiar with CVIS. It's where an individual comes from another country, and they're going to become a student here in our at one of our schools. There could be an instance where they would have 3 documents to make up the list A. What's the most common question I receive under list A, B, or C documents is that second line, the issuing authority. Dave, can we use abbreviations? Well, the generic Washington, D.C. answer is you can never go wrong if you spell it out. But in the contents of HR, payroll, of an individual completing forms such as this, if you were to write SSA or SSN, referring to Social Security Administration or the number of the card, I think you'd be okay with that. But if you use an abbreviation that, although it may be very common in your field, in your state, in your part of the country, but not everywhere else, be very careful with that. I know in Virginia, where I live, where we get our driver's license, it's called the DMV. DMV is very common. But you know, not every state it's called the DMV. There's only a handful of states where it's a DMV. So be very careful with that. And you see down toward the bottom, it's where we have that oval red area there. That's the date where you're going to put where an individual is going to begin working for pay. Now look off to the left. You'll see Section 2. You're to complete that as the employer. Section 2 must be completed no later than 3 business days after employee starts working for pay. Section 1 has to be completed, remember, no later than the first day they show up for pay. But let's say Don's company is open Monday through Friday and closed on Saturday and Sunday. Let's say the first day I show up for pay is Monday. What day of that week does the I-9 need to be completed to be compliant? And a completed I-9 is defined as Section 1 and 2, completely filled out, signed, and dated. You know, many employers go, well, that's easy, Dave, 3 days. Okay, you start on Monday. It's by the close of business Wednesday. When the actual answer is Thursday, look back at that paragraph. Must be completed no later than 3 business days after the employee begins working for pay. 3 business days after Monday. That'd be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I gave you the example that Don's firm is closed on Saturday and Sunday. Why? Maybe I started working for pay on a Thursday. Given that scenario, what day of the week would the I-9 need to be completed by to be compliant? That would be Friday, Monday, Tuesday. And it's your business days. Many a times I'm posed the question, well, Dave, our plant here in this city, we're right here, but 10 miles down the road is our headquarters. We are open 7 days a week, but our headquarters is only open 5 days a week. Which do we go by? Well, that's your call. But whatever policy you set forth, make sure that's uniform and you use that moving forward in regards to completion of the I-9. To wind out on this slide, you see on the left-hand side, you must examine original documents. The documents that an individual shows you, whether it be a List A or a B and C document, must be original documents. The only document that doesn't have to be an original is a certified birth certificate. You can accept that, and you can move forward, Thomas. And remember, all documents must be unexpired. You cannot accept an expired document. Let's look here at examining documents, genuineness, and photocopies. We don't expect you to be a document expert by any means. Don't get off this call and say, hey, we're going to change that supply room into an infrared yellow document checking station. The only thing that the M274 tells you, remember, guidance on completing the I-9, in regards to documents is, look at the second statement. You must, cap letters, must, accept the document presented by your employee if it reasonably appears to be 2 things. Does the document look genuine, and does it relate to the individual? And if it does meet that test, you must accept it. Now, it's generally during a presentation when I give live ones around the country that all these hands start raising. Now, hold on, Dave. I've had some extensive training in fraudulent documents, and our policy goes up and beyond, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, remember that number with the Department of Justice Office Special Counsel? If you have a policy that goes up and beyond this, that's something you need to bounce off the Office of Special Counsel. Make sure you're not discriminating against individuals. If they're meeting the policy, be very careful with that. Additionally, I have individuals that will say, well, Dave, they showed me 2 documents. They showed me a birth certificate and a driver's license. It had different last names, so I turned them away. Hey, you got to think about that for a second, right? They're born, they have 1 last name. Maybe it was a female, maybe she was married, and she changed her last name. You have to think about that. And you'll see down to the bottom, you can move forward, Thomas. Documents must be original, and we talked about the only copy is a certified copy of a birth certificate. Go ahead, Thomas. Receipt rule. Some of you may be familiar with the receipt. Many of you may say, well, what is that? Well, look at it. The very first sentence there. Receipts may be used as, and here's your key words, temporary proof of employment eligibility when a list A, B, or C document has been lost, stolen, or damaged, meaning they already had the document issued to them, but somewhere along the line they lost it. You can accept a receipt for one of those. True story. 2 years ago, I lost my driver's license here in Virginia. In Virginia, I told you where we get our driver's license is the DMV, Division of Motor Vehicles. I went to the DMV, I filled out the form, I had to pay the $20 fee. Young lady printed off and gave me a receipt for my driver's license and said, Mr. Basham, here is proof of your driver's license that you can show until we mail you your replacement driver's license in the next week. I could have bounced out the DMV that day, maybe went across the street to maybe a restaurant. They were hiring, and they wanted somebody to start right away. I could have been hired right then and there, filled out the I-9, and maybe I wanted to provide my driver's license and Social Security card for the I-9. I could have provided my receipt for that driver's license, and the employer would have to accept that. But let's go back to the slide here. Make sure that the receipt that's issued to you is coming from the originating agency. If you can tell in the meat of the receipt it's for a driver's license, but the header says from the National Football League or from the University of Hawaii, well, Houston, we might have a problem, right? And I told you this receipt is just temporary proof. Going back to the slide, you see the third comment there. They have 90 days from the date that they start working for pay to show you, because remember the receipt was just temp proof, to actually show you that actual replacement document. In the scenario I gave you, I would have to show that restaurant my driver's license. If I can't show the restaurant my driver's license in 90 days, they can terminate me. Remember, receipt is just temporary proof. There are 2 exceptions to the 90-day rule. You see it there in the middle of the page. And down toward the bottom, you see a receipt where an individual is applying for the initial EAD card, that employment authorization document, or for the renewal of an expiring EAD card. You can't accept a receipt, nor can you accept a receipt if an employment's going to last less than 3 business days. Go ahead, Thomas. Hello, Thomas. There we go. Copy and documents. Hey, you can either read this whole paragraph or remember this. You make a copy of everybody's document they show you, or you don't make any copies at all. It's one or the other. Now, you're enrolled in E-Verify. You know you have to make a copy of any of these 4 List A documents I'm about to tell you. Permanent resident card, that EAD card, U.S. passport or U.S. passport card. You must make a copy of those. But set aside E-Verify right now. If you're not enrolled in E-Verify, you make a copy of everybody's documents or you don't make any copies at all. Now you might say, hey Dave, we never made copies, but we're now thinking that we want to start, but we're concerned about somebody hollering discrimination. You know, me and Dawn have been friends for years. We work for, she's worked for a company, let's say for 10 years. I just got hired. They didn't make copies of Dawn's documents when she was hired, and they made my copies, and I mentioned that to Dawn, and Dawn goes, hey, you know, why did they make your copies? They didn't make mine. That's discrimination, Dave. You know, you can simply do a memorandum for file. Hey, in regards to completion of the I-9 from this day step moving forward, we will start making copies of documents for the I-9. File that away. During a self-audit, internal audit, or an audit by ICE, if that comes into play or question, you pull that out into story. And the same goes for if you make copies now, but you want to stop. Do that memorandum for file. Okay, go ahead, Thomas. Section 3, this winds down the I-9. Page 2, the bottom section. What is it used for? You'll see there toward the bottom. You must re-verify an employee using Section 3 if their temporary employment authorization has expired. Maybe an individual showed you an EAD card that wasn't expired at the time you hired them. Now here it's coming up to that EAD card expiring. It's at that time where you complete Section 3, where the individual can provide another document. You don't ask them, hey, I need to see your renewed EAD card, because remember, you can't ask what document. But this is the section that you would use. Additionally, you see there toward the bottom of the page of this slide, we'll look at the rehiring of individuals in 3 years in just a second. But look at that last comment. You can use Section 3 to update the biographical information of an employee. An employee changes their name. Maybe they get married, divorced, or just otherwise change their name. You may use Section 3 to document that, but remember that word uniformity. If you use Section 3 for one person that changed their name, you better do it for everyone that changed their name. Go ahead and move forward, Thomas. We added this block in here, this slide, when to re-verify. We have many employers who are going, now hold on, I don't quite understand there in block Section 3. What documents do we verify? So we pretty much put this slide together. You do not re-verify the documents off to the right once they expire. Passport cards, permanent resident cards, or List B documents. Once they expire, don't call an individual back in and say we need to re-verify that document. There are 2 exceptions to the permanent resident card where you would. There they are in the middle of the screen. Remember, you're going to get a copy of that PowerPoint. And you usually re-verify those List or A or C documents that have an expiration date. Go ahead and move forward, Thomas. Just as a reminder, remember, send in your questions in the chat feature. We'll address those here shortly. Correcting mistakes on the I-9. You don't have to complete a new I-9 if a mistake is made on the I-9, you can make a correction. What's the correct way to make a correction on the I-9? We're talking in pen to paper form here. Is simply to line out the item that needs to be corrected off to the side, make the correction initial and date. No strikeovers. Watch this, Don. I want to turn this 4 into a 7 to a 7 to a 7. And never use whiteout on an I-9. Now, let's talk about making corrections in Section 1. Who completes Section 1? The employee. So if a correction needs to be made in Section 1, guess who's the only one that should be making the correction? The employee. Anybody in your employer's firm can make a correction in Section 2. Maybe Dawn completed Section 2 on many hires over the years. Now she's been promoted up. She's no longer doing that. Maybe there's some corrections, which I doubt, but maybe there's some corrections that need to be made in Section 2. Anybody in Dawn's firm can make those corrections. Missing forms. What do you do if you're missing an I-9 that you realize you should have on someone? Dawn, as you see, Dawn has fired me, hired me, starting all kinds of companies today. Thanks for your assistance, Dawn. Dawn started another company, let's say 3 years ago, and she had 10 employees she hired on that day. And here it is 3 years later, and she has the same 10 employees. She hasn't hired anybody, fired anybody, let anybody go. This week, Dawn's doing an audit on her I-9s. She realizes, ooh, I'm missing an I-9, and maybe it's on me. What does she do? Go back to the slide here. She immediately provides me an I-9 to go ahead and complete Section 1. Now follow me here, looking back to the slide where we talk about do not backdate. Dawn calls me in and says, Dave, I can't find your I-9. Need you to complete here Section 1. I complete Section 1 and I sign and I date it today. Dawn then shows me the list of acceptable documents. Maybe I provide her a B and C document. Maybe it's not till tomorrow. But when I do provide her those documents and Dawn fills out Section 2, when she signs and she dates the day she saw the documents I'm showing her, she dates it today's date. That's where we're saying don't backdate Section 1 and Section 2. But there in Section 2 where Dawn, remember that oval area where she's going to put the date that I started working for pay? Dawn's going to put that real date of 3 years ago where I started working for pay. Now you might say, Dave, that's crazy. During an audit, auditor's going to catch that, hey, you started work 3 years ago for this company, but you and Dawn just filled out the I-9 right now. That's past 3 business days. She's going to get her hand slapped for being late on an I-9. Yes, she is, but it's not going to be as painful if she gets caught backdating. And if she does get caught backdating that government form, she's in serious trouble. Remember, these auditors do this for a living. And in this scenario I just gave you would be an easy one for them to catch. Why? Because this version of the I-9 wasn't even in existence 3 years ago. Be very careful with that. Go ahead, Thomas. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Let's wind out with some storage and retention, then we'll have some resources I'll go over real quick, and we'll go to those Q&As. Make sure you have an I-9 on file for all your employees. Store them anywhere you want, on-site, off-site, but if you get a notice of inspection, which may be from ICE, you've got 3 days to be able to provide those I-9s. We recommend that you store, if you're making copies of documents, that you store them with the I-9. You don't have to, it's just our recommendation. And make sure that you only authorized individuals have access to them. I know you're not putting them in the 3-inch binder and leaving them in the break room, are you? Go ahead, Thomas. Okay, how long do you retain an I-9 after an individual leaves? I've already told you, those employees that you hired after November 6, '86, and they're still working for you, you need to have an I-9 on file. But once they leave, they quit or you fired them, how long do you retain it? Well, look up top here. Hey, it's 3 years after the date you hired an employee or 1 year after the date the employee terminates, whichever is latter. The bottom explains it a little bit further. Take the date, maybe I quit. What would Dawn do if I quit? She would pull out my I-9, she would look at the date, as you see at the bottom, that she hired me, the day I started working for paid there in section 2, and remember that oval area? She'd take that date, add 3 years to that date, put that date off to the side. Then she'd take the date that I quit. She would add 1 year to that date, put that date off to the side. Which of the 2 dates are latter? That's how long you retain the I-9. Where do you retain it? Wherever you want. You might have a retention file of I-9s. You might keep them in the regular flow of your I-9s. What do you do with that I-9 after that retention date has come and gone? M274 doesn't tell you. All it says is that you need to keep that I-9 up to that retention date. Let me take off my official hat. Why would you want to keep it? But that's your call. Let's put it back on. Remember, you need to keep that I-9 up to that retention date. Let's go ahead and move forward, Thomas. All right, let's wind out with some resources. Go ahead, Thomas. I-9 Central, we talked about that. It's available in English and Spanish. It's your one-stop shop with everything on the I-9. If you haven't visited it, take a look at it, okay? If anything, just to go to the FAQs, I can tell you and guarantee you, if you go to I-9 Central and click on those FAQs and read some of those questions and answers, you're certainly going to learn something that maybe you didn't, maybe you've been taught incorrectly. So take a look at that. Go ahead, Thomas. Additionally, on our I-9 Central, we have some additional resources. The M274 is available also in Spanish. We also talk about know your rights, mergers and acquisitions. What do you do if companies merge together? And there's some examples of documents that we have on our site, those acceptable documents you might want to take a look at. Go ahead, Thomas. We also have some multimedia resources. Here in the past year, we added what we call vignettes. I'm a good old country boy from West Virginia. I like to call them lunchback sessions. Hey, how did Dave say that we complete section 1? You can click on that. It's about a 2 or 3 minute clip. What did he say about section 3? Same thing, 2 or 3 minute clip. Or look at the bottom there. You can click on the I-9 webinar on demand. It's about a 22, 23 minute webinar. You don't have to watch a whole thing. Once you open it up, you can go, ooh, I want to start right here. Great resources, not only for new training, but some maintain and sustain training for those of you that have additional individuals or others that complete the I-9 within your firm. Go ahead, Thomas. And you can go ahead and move forward. I'm with the outreach department of USCIS. There's about 10 of us, 10 to 12 of us that travel the country or give sessions like this over the phone. If you're interested in that, you'll see our email address there where you can reach out. All our speaking services such as this are free, And if we travel to your location to speak at a conference, we handle all travel accommodations as well. Here's that customer service number I kept telling you about at the beginning, 888-464-4218. Any question on the I-9 or E-Verify. Although you can certainly contact back to EMPTRUST in regards to some of the services they provide. But if you have a question on a document or how do I fill this out, call that number Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Additionally, here's our email addresses for I-9 E-Verify and the website addresses. Go ahead and move forward, Thomas. This is simply our disclaimer. This is simply meant as an instructional and an information session. I hope this certainly assisted you. I'm going to turn this back over, and we'll hopefully jump into some Q&As with Dawn here in just a second. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dave. We do have one question from the group. The question is, do self-employed or employee-owned business owners need to create an I-9 for themselves? And then the second part of that question is, do owners need to be E-verified?
Great question. Number one, let's talk about the I-9. I can tell you if you're self-employed, 99.9% of the time you will not need to be complete an I-9 on yourself. Now, in regards to E-Verify, and we will touch more on E-Verify in early February. I've got February 4th in my head somewhere, but don't worry, you're going to get that email from EMPTRUST. In regards to E-Verify, you really have to look at the specific state you're working in, because there's a total of 20 states that have enacted legislation requiring the mandated use of E-Verify in some form or fashion. So you really have to look at what state am I in, and then you can go to the state website, or isn't Google a great thing? Just Google Virginia or Google Illinois E-Verify, and you can find out what that state requirement is in regards to your instance of having to be verified. Back to you, Dawn.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other questions? If anybody has any questions, if you type those into the chat box, we'll get those read and ask Dave while we have him still available to us. Just open up your chat box and type it in, and it'll pop up, and make sure it gets answered. And then also, if there's any other questions for myself or for PDS, please feel free to ask those as well, or for EMPTRUST.
Yep. Dawn, I see one just popped up here. It says, hey Dave, what's the right way to fill in Section 3 when an employee transitions from an EAD to a permanent resident? Do I need to modify Section 1 since they have a green card now? That's a great question. If an individual, and this is really a two-part answer question. Number one, if an individual status changes, you do not need to complete a new I-9 on them, okay? So if their status changes, in this case, they went from an EAD to a permanent resident card, no, they wouldn't have to do a new I-9. Where you would need to do Section 3 is, let's say that EAD card is about to expire. And once again, I'll use just a scenario here. The time Dawn hired me, I provided her an EAD card. And my EAD card is going to expire on 15 December. Hopefully by now, Dawn will have come to me and said, hey Dave, your EAD card, which is your work authorization document, is about to expire in 5 days. No, based on that, by the 15th, in order for Dawn's Form I-9 to be compliant, I would need to show Dawn another document. Maybe it is a renewal of an EAD. Maybe it is a permanent resident card because I've received that now. That's when Dawn would complete Section 3. So that's kind of like a two-part answer question based on very similar circumstances. Back to you, Dawn.
All right, we have another question from a staffing company that indicates they may fill positions on demand from clients. And the question is, can they have an I-9 on file but have the actual date, start date of work when assigned to the employer?
Great question, and it's the staffing companies and the staffing industry that we had in mind when we put out our current version of the M274. I'm not saying in all the staffing community, but many times we call those individuals where, let's say I went into a staffing company, provided my resume, the staffing company goes, ooh, Dave, you're a public speaker? Yeah, we have a position for you. We just don't have one available right now, but we would certainly like to hire you and use you. They can put me what we call, and what many times the staffing companies call, into the ready pool. And when you put me into that ready pool, you can complete that I-9 on me right away. And in this instance, this young lady or young man is asking, so if they, let's give that scenario. I came in today, I showed them my resume, they like that, they want to put me in the ready pool, don't have a date for me to start right yet. They could complete the I-9 on me today because they've put me in that ready pool. But that start date, they don't know exactly when I'm going to start with that particular client. You can put a date 30, 60 days down the road right now. And then when I actually go to start work at that client's location, you can make a correction to that date in Section 2. Line through it, make the correct date where I'm going to start working for pay, initial and date. I hope that answers that question. That's a great question. Back to you, Dawn.
Okay.
And I tell you what, Dawn, while any other questions are coming in, let me bring up one, and this is something that has become hot here recently. In the Federal Register has just come out within the past week or two, comments. It's a 60-day comment period from the public in regards to proposed changes to the Form I-9. Anytime something comes out in the Federal Register for proposed changes, there's a good chance that that particular item is going to change, but we're looking for comments from the public. Should this proposed change to I-9 come out, I can tell you it's going to look like no I-9 that you've seen yet. But what is generally, the question I'm being asked is, Dave, when, if this is approved, when's this new I-9 going to come out? Well, let me let you know the flow. It's a 60-day comment period with the public right now. At the end of those 60 days, we take a look at all those comments. Now, granted, depending on how many comments will really determine how much time it takes for us to look at those comments. After those comments, we might make tweaks or additional testing or whatnot to the form. Then we will put in the Federal Register another 30-day comment period to the public. At the end of that 30 days, we take a look at those comments, make any tweaks, and then we submit that changed form to the various government agency hands that need to touch it for approval. So should this be changed, a new version of the I-9 come out, it could be several months, it could be months before it comes out. But to make you aware, you can go to I-9 Central, I keep beating back to that, where you can click on that to read about those proposed changes on the I-9. I did want to put that out, Don. Sorry if I interrupted.
No, that's fine. Okay, well, we're nearing the top of the hour, so it looks like I don't have any additional questions that have come up, but this has been a fantastic webinar. And Dave, thank you so much for your time today to educate us on Form I-9 compliant processes. And I know we have an upcoming webinar on E-Verify that we'll all be looking forward to. And I want to give a big thank you to EMPTRUST and PDS for also sponsoring this webinar with us. And Larry, I'll turn it back over to you to close us out.
Wonderful. So, well, let me add and state that error of omission begets new rules. So the beginning of new rules is really what you just described there, Dave. This is where software partners like the EMPTRUST with their I-9 solution, or ESR with their solutions, and other government onboarding regulatory issues are important. So the cooperation, none of the three of us that partner together can fully understand everything on each of the different areas that involve compliance, and that's why it takes an alliance of professionals working together, both government and individuals, because we're doing this not just for the sake of regulations. We're doing this to make things fair in the marketplace and attempt to remove those elements of prejudice in the workforce. So I thank the group today. I thank you for the cooperation of my partners here and of the panelists and of course the viewers to this presentation. As more questions come about, do send it to us. We'll answer them, and if at all possible, hopefully we've learned enough here today to make that two-page document easier to understand. I thank all, and you guys have a great day. Bye now.
Thank you, Larry. Take care.
And thank Thomas Matthew as well. We forgot to mention him on the call. Bye now.
Thanks, Thomas.